Welcome to the Rack in Review, a comprehensive look into propeller heads, reasons, devices, and refills. Today we are looking at the Sitbull amp from Devoloop. This is something I've had interest in since the announcement video back in October of 2014. Although there are two other amp emulations that were released in the months prior to the announcement, I was excited due to my time with Devoloops' DynaRage compressor. The selling point of said device being the tube distortion algorithm they had developed. For my use, the compression and subtle distortion does good on the usual suspects. But the place it really shined was on bass guitars with heavy settings on the tube distortion. A little compression followed by the tweakable tube distortion being pushed for effect gave me some very nice sounds, and the idea of using the same tech on a bass amp emulation definitely piqued my interest. Now I must clarify, in this review I will not be doing a shootout with this device up against every other available bass amp emulation available in Reason. I want individual reviews to stand more on the abilities of the subject of the device, rather than direct comparisons to other offerings. With that said, it is also irresponsible to not note the overall design and options available with the stock Line 6 device, the one built-in device you would definitely be replacing. I would like to leave out the comparisons to the soft tube bass amp that comes with Reason 8, since it's technically a rack extension, despite its availability to those who upgrade. Here you can see the rating system. As for myself, I normally decide the value of a device using only a few points. Here it's been expanded and will be used as a star system from 1 to 5. We will be evaluating based on functionality, workflow, uniqueness, aesthetics, and price value. The device itself by design is a stack amp with one tube distortion head and 3 cabinets. Devoloop has listed on the shop page they will be adding more cabinets at a later time. The device is broken down into 3 sections. First, you have your traditional head amp distortion section. The first knob being the pre-gain knob, adjusting the signal input. Pre-saturation adds the rage tube distortion to the audio signal. The distortion uses the same proprietary algorithm as the DynaRage compressor. Here, you also find a 3-band wide slope EQ. The low EQ boosting and cutting between 30Hz to 320Hz. The middle band working between 160Hz to 1.3 kHz. And the high band between 2.6 kHz to 10 kHz. Next, you have a dedicated section to the compressor. Although it should be noted the compressor controls are limited to one knob that is not continuously variable. Choosing between 1 to 10, you get different preset amounts of compression on the impending signal pre-EQ. There is also a limiter switch which locks the compressor's ratio to infinite 1. The compressor also allows for external input for such uses as sidechain compression and ducking. You can have a bit more control over the compression's external processing via an external volume control. Finally, you have the cabinet section. First, we have the hopper knob or presence control, which boosts the 1.9 kHz range, adding more crisp high end. The cabinet section allows you to determine one of currently 3 bass cabinets. The bass cabinets can also be turned off altogether. The DI cab control is a dry-wet knob from the amp head or distortion section, allowing a variable amount of signal to be passed into the cabinet. The dry-wet controls the amount of dry signal versus any processing done by the Sitbull amp. Last, you have an output gain to scale the amount of signal from the device at its last stage. The back section of the device features your audio ins for the device and external compression source, along with some nice CV inputs and outputs. Here you have the CV input controls for the pre-gain, saturation, hopper, and compression. There are also CV outs for the compressor, based on the amount of compression applied to the signal. And a signal out, basically sending a bipolar conversion of audio to CV. Both of these are interesting additions and welcome for anyone who likes to CV tweak instruments. The only downside of the CVs, which I would think could easily be remedied, are trim knobs for the CV connections. With all this said, in comparison to the Line 6 device, you have one less EQ controller split, 4 less amp heads, and 2 less cabinet options, and this is all considering that you don't have pod farm. While there are a number of features, this is something you're expected to purchase with the intent of adding to your arsenal, something that's hard to justify when you get a little more built into the software you already own. The device is set up in a logical way, following left to right with the flow of the signal processing, although there is some room for improvement. The device's EQ lists left to right, high, mid, and low adjustments. This may be intended to represent select bass amplifiers, but the controls are opposite to the standards of most devices and hardware. Along with that, the EQ selection switch is defaulted and listed as a bypass, something opposed to the majority standard. These two things lead you to adjust as you would normally, only to realize you may have bypassed the EQ section incidentally and/or adjusted your EQs incorrectly. There could be some simplification in swapping the 2 switches on the compressor section, as this would allow them to correspond better to the knobs above them. Finally, the position of the hopper control should be on the left-hand side of the device, as it's a presence control and thus is adding boost and frequency before the cabinet, similar to the EQ section. These are all more personal preference, but these are things that do influence my desire for purchase. Simply, there are a number of small tweaks that could be done to get everything here more in line with a concise design. Now, this is a bit complicated. The most unique thing about the device is the distortion, which, although clearly present, is lacking ability. If this uses the same tube emulation as the Rage DSP algorithm provided in DynaRage, the fact that it's been turned into a one-knob solution is a misstep. Being able to dial in the sound is the most unique thing about the tube distortion found in their other device, and removing it from a specialized device like this is a greatly missed opportunity, even without considering the current competition for the device. Personally, it's hard to notice the outlier that makes the device special when compared to the Line 6 bass amp. While there are 5 amp heads and cabinets in the Line 6, there's only 1 amp head and 3 cabinets available in the Sitbull. Although I do like the Sitbull's cabinets, I don't feel they offer anything substantially special. This considering 2 of them sound very similar despite being clearly different when looking at a spectral analyzer while passing white noise through the device. This being a bit of a letdown when researching 1x21 cabinets, which seem to be very rare and highly regarded for their sound. Despite this, I cannot give this less than half a star, as the unique sound is there, just not in the same amount of control as what I expected. The look the device has is that of an old wooden bass amp passed generation to generation, with black mesh covering the main panel and wood or bone grain knobs, and Native American inspired shapes and colors on the bottom section, and even a large eagle's feather painted across the mesh background. The back panel shows much more wear and features a looking glass with a picture of an American history icon, Sitting Bull. The GUI of the device is not necessarily my taste, but that is not to say it looks bad. It was carefully put together and does not break the use or placement of the device in the rack cosmetically. The device isn't necessarily expensive. It's coming in at $29 currently, and that price is reasonable. It's much cheaper than most combo amps, even if bought secondhand. At this price, it's even cheaper than most 1/4 inch to headphone plug-in amps available. With that said, raising the price, as it seems to be intended, even by $10, does not make it much cheaper than many other offerings available, especially others available in the prop shop. Considering my favorite thing about the device is the distortion also found in the DynaRage available for $39, I may even just consider buying that and adding some EQ and using the cabinet emulations available on other devices. Overall, the Sitbull bass amp hits a couple of points but misses what I think rack extensions really need to do on the whole. We purchased these plugins with the intent of adding to what is missing, or generally improving what's already there. While a purchase of the device is not a bad idea, I personally think you need to trial it and decide if it's worth it for you by playing with it and seeing if its sound is something you truly desire to have within the rack. Currently, I'm giving the overall device a 3.5 stars out of 5. As I've said repeatedly, I love their tube emulation, and I think it's the true standout of the device. I would definitely change my rating based on the addition of the Nurgle and Korn controls. Final note, although I do enjoy this amp and the sound it gives my electric bass, I do have to say I almost enjoy the sound it gives my bass synth patches a little bit more. Like I've said repeatedly, I really like that tube distortion it adds, and it really starts to shine, for me personally, when you're adding in some synth stuff. Well, this has been the Rack and Review. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below and let me know what you want me to do next. Give the video a like if you found it informative in any way, and please subscribe to the channel. I have a lot more videos that I'm already starting to work on, and I want you to be the first to know when it comes out. Well, this has been Fretless Fingers. I'll see you later.